This episode of The Apartment Guys is being brought to you by Greenlight Equity Group. Greenlight Equity Group acquires and operates cash-flowing multifamily assets in progressive metropolitan markets such as Salt Lake City, Idaho, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and Columbus, Ohio. Greenlight targets consistent, solid returns for its investors and a healthy environment for residents by operating high-quality, safe, clean, affordable apartment communities. To learn more about Greenlight and to sign up for the investor list, go to www.glequitygroup.com.
Welcome to The Apartment Guys, where we dive deep into all things multifamily investing. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower real estate investors to reach their highest potential. Each week, host Tate Seymour interviews high-level guests from all over the industry who are sure to bring valuable, actionable ideas that will propel your career to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned investor, you are in the right place. And now your host, the apartment guy, Tate Seymour.
Well, guys, here at the Apartment Guys podcast, we do our best to bring the highest level guests that we possibly can onto the show to share from their level of expertise and experience. And I always try to get great heavy hitters on that have done a lot of business and people that are in different parts of their career. Today, we're lucky. We have Mr. Michael Becker on the show, who really does not need a whole lot of introduction to many of you, but Michael is a rock star in this space. He has done over 10,000 doors in his multifamily career and currently owns 6,000 doors just in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin, Texas. He started buying apartments in 2013 from nothing. He had been a banker. So his story is remarkable. I hope that you get a ton out of it. I know that I did. I think it'll kind of knock your socks off, really, to get to hang out with Mr. Becker for an hour, get in his world and hear his thoughts on this great industry that we're in. So if you like the podcast, and I hope you do, please leave a review and rating for me on whatever app that you're listening on. You can typically find a place to leave a rating and review. Please do so. It helps out the podcast quite a bit in terms of listeners and getting the word out to as many people as we possibly can about this wonderful opportunity in apartment building investing. So with that, let's just jump right into it with Mr. Michael Becker. Welcome, everybody, back. Another episode of The Apartment Guys. And I think we've outdone ourselves today with the caliber guests that we have. And that's saying a lot because we've had some amazing guests on this podcast. But today we have Mr. Michael Becker with us. And Michael is a rock star in this apartment investing space as principal of SPI Advisory in Dallas, Fort Worth. He's done over 10,000 apartment units in his multifamily career and currently owns 6,000 units, all in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin. So that is in and of itself just a cut to the chase and highlight your success and achievements. But Michael, first of all, I just want to say welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tate.
Thanks for being open to doing this. And I know my listeners are going to be very grateful, and this is going to be amazing talk. So, before we kind of get into real estate and creating value in that realm for our listeners, obviously would love to know kind of your story, both, if you want to share on a personal level, but certainly on a professional and a multifamily level, kind of how you got from, Michael Becker, the kid and
Sure.
and growing person to where you are today.
Yeah, happy to do that. So as you kind of mentioned, I'm in Dallas, Texas. That's kind of where I grew up. So lived here my entire life. Went to college in Denton, Texas, which is just kind of north of Dallas, about half an hour. So it's kind of lived in the whole region my entire life. So feel pretty fortunate that I grew up in an area that's been really favorable from a business and economic standpoint to do what I do for a living now. Didn't come from a silver spoon. So my mother was a school secretary. My father fixed appliances for a living. So everything I got in my life is kind of between my brains, my work ethic, and some guts, I guess. Going out and just kind of taking it. I didn't really have a lot of mentoring at home from like the family. Like I know a lot of people are fortunate enough that their dad or their an uncle or someone's in the business. That wasn't my case. So went to school, wasn't the best student in the world. Kind of got out of did okay, and then spent 8 years in college. So and I'm not a doctor. So kind of the joke I like to say is I beat Tommy Boy by 1 year. So I was in college a long time. I kind of was a little listless a little bit first part of college, and ended up working full time and going to night school the last 4 or 5 years of my college career. Eventually met my wife, got my stuff together, got out, went into banking. So I was in banking when I was in college, and like the retail branch, new account teller type of stuff in college, and then got into the credit department of a regional bank after I graduated. Started learning how people put commercial real estate loans together. So did that for a few years and got promoted onto the production side, and ended up working for a regional bank for a few years. And Wells Fargo bought my bank in 2008, and I kind of got acquired in the middle of the Great Recession. And then coming out of the Great Recession, really I was always loaning on commercial real estate, and I did kind of all the major food groups, office, industrial, retail, and multifamily. And then coming out of the Great Recession, multifamily was the thing that was working, so I kind of specialized into that. And over a 4 or 5 year period, I did just a ton of loans, and really cut my teeth that way, and just really learned the industry, and just did deal after deal after deal. And through that process, realized I was kind of the wrong side of all these transactions. It's kind of better to be the borrower than a lender. I was making a good salary and bonus and things like that, but my clients were getting wealthy and really in a very tax efficient way. So started out in 2010 or 2011, sort of buying some little rent houses, kind of out of the foreclosure crisis of the Great Recession. So ended up doing 16 little rent houses. Realized that wasn't very scalable. So in 2013, I'd met my now business partner through the bank. He was working for a broker out of Los Angeles that would help high net worth individuals in Orange County and LA County buy property in Texas. And I made a loan to one of their clients, and that's kind of how we met. So 2013, went out on our own, bought our first deal, and 10,000 plus units later, here we are today. So it's been a pretty good run. On top of that, you probably know me most through I've been the co-host of the Old Capital Real Estate Investing podcast for about the last 6 years with Paul Peoples, who runs Old Capital, and then recently launched a new show called the Multifamily Investing Show with Michael Becker. So you can find that on YouTube. Is kind of the predominant thing. It's a in studio, highly produced show, or on iTunes or Stitcher, or probably anywhere you hear my voice right now. You find it there, or go to the multifamilyinvestingshow.com. So www.multifamilyinvestingshow.com is our URL. So with that, I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have.
Well, that's amazing. So yeah, I was going to highlight your podcast. So Multifamily Investor Show, mention that again right now. It is definitely worth checking out, listeners. Like Michael said, very nicely produced and high level content, as you would expect from somebody that's been doing a podcast for a long time and is certainly a very seasoned expert in the field. So, a lot of different things to kind of unpack and talk about and ask you about there. But I'm curious about the college years, because I did a little soul searching in college too. Was it a matter of kind of locking into a sense of purpose that wasn't quite there yet?
I was always worked. So started working when I was 15 years old, and my father is blue collar. So, kind of had that work ethic instilled in me from that standpoint, but we never really had the guidance of like, hey, you should focus on this and it's important, and really kind of had that push. They just didn't know any better, really to guide me to that way. And so then I kind of got in college and started having a good time, and then going to class was a little bit more optional. And then eventually I kind of realized I wanted to progress in my life. And I spent a bunch of years at that point, and and kind of got about halfway or most of the way through. So I just really need to kind of focus for a couple years, really buckle down, get it done, and come out of college. I don't want to waste all this money and time I spent. So eventually, kind of found my purpose. And my mother would have told me was when I met my now wife in college.
Okay.
It kind of really got my new focus and really got out of it at that point. Just got to really buckle down. So it was had a good time along the way, and then eventually got serious. And so I was 25 or almost 26 when I graduated college. So had a a little bit more maturity when I came out of college, just by being a little bit older, and had some work experience, and so I was able to really kind of hit the ground running when I actually officially started my professional career about 26 years old.
It sounds like you always had a pretty stout work ethic growing up. Probably learned that from your dad.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, being focused on the right thing, just working hard doesn't necessarily mean you're working smart, or you're working, towards the things that'll actually, advance you in life and fulfill you along the way.
Yeah. I have a kind of a similar background where I've got a dad that certainly worked hard and was very skilled and talented. He was a dentist and very good at what he did, but really, and he would be the first to say this, he wasn't really an entrepreneur by wiring, so to speak. I think some of us just have this natural way we're built, the way we're programmed, just wants to go do business and get deals done and have a lot of fun on the way. I know I've always had that in me. But I feel like you and I have some similarities in that we didn't necessarily have a great role model or example around being a businessman, or being like being a business owner even. But we learned to work hard. And I was 13, 14 when I maybe 14, I guess, when I got my first job working in restaurants at nights and weekends. And that's where you learn, that's where it all gets ingrained. And it sounds like you really just needed to kind of lock into a sense of direction and purpose to kind of put that work ethic back on the rails and really get it done. And man, once you did, holy cow.
Yeah.
Nice work. So talk about, so I love that, we talk about mentorship all the time on the show and how important it is. And almost everyone has a mentor story that's a really key part of their progression. Yet with you, I noticed that really that key person that came along and kind of shifted things for you, it sounds like, was your wife.
Yeah, I mean, that really kind of got the motivation a little more crystallized, right? You don't want to be the loser that went to college for 7 years and then dropped out and didn't actually graduate. I don't want to have that on my my shoulder. So, got in and then got into banking. So it really kind of drove the motivation. Then when I got into banking, I was fortunate to be around a bunch of guys that were, older, kind of seasoned at the bank, and they really kind of showed the ropes of how the banking industry worked. And then, through the banking industry, I just got exposed just naturally to a bunch of, high net worth people that were doing real estate transactions or business owners and various form of fashions that were clients of the bank. And then I kind of got into the production side. So that's who you would call on. And then, and then it was tough at the time, but, when the Great Recession happened, I was at the bank, and Wells Fargo just had bought us. And so we're kind of doing a lot of problem loan workout, a lot of the issues from the former bank that Wells Fargo took on with the acquisition. And that was a really tough time, but it was a great 12, 18 months of my life, really, with the benefit of reflection, because I got to see, how all these deals, that were fundamentally set up in a really terrible way 2-3 years prior, how the ramifications of would be when there's a little stress in the economy. And I got to learn a whole lot of lessons, a whole lot of things I never would have been exposed to relatively early in my career. I didn't have to pay the economic price to learn the lesson. I, got to do it as I got a paycheck. So that was a really great lessons I took out of that when we're kind of forming our company. Few years after that was kind of behind us. I took a lot of those kind of foundational things and applied that with our business practices that we still do today, And it has been, unbelievable a little bit to think of the last, year or so when with the whole lockdown and COVID and everything. We haven't actually felt a little more economic pain, but our business is basically pretty resilient throughout all this because of a lot of the principle and foundational things that we set up that I learned from 13 years ago when kind of going through the Great Recession, all the loan workouts I did. And really kind of as like a professional mentor, I never had a formalized mentorship, but one of the guys that have been most, impactful for me really is actually Paul Peoples, who I co-host the Old Capital podcast with. So he's 14, 15 years older than me. And so, he not only had the Great Recession, he also had kind of the RTC days, the SNL bust of the Southwest and Texas in particular. So he kind of went through that. And, really what he did, it was kind of helped me really focus. He's one of the best networkers I've ever met in my entire life. And he's really driven. He's one of the most productive people you ever will meet in your entire life. I mean, he's extremely productive and he's always just accomplishing a whole lot of things. So really kind of crystallize how to be productive and how to network and how to really be efficient. Because, working hard is one thing, but if you're working hard at the wrong thing, you're not going to get the results that you want. So just being able to kind of take all the various things that I had, and, that's what I realized when I was a banker. I had a lot of resources. I just wasn't utilizing them in the most effective ways. I had a lot of relationships with the brokers, and I knew how to do the debt, and had a bunch of rich people I knew just kind of from clients of mine. I knew a bunch of the vendors and management companies. But how do you, it's one thing knowing all these people, how do you put all those pieces of the puzzle together to get a clear picture? One, and then two, do you have the gumption or the guts to go out and actually take action, take the risk of actually going out and doing a deal? And those are kind of two different mindsets, from the employee mindset to the people that actually, have a lot of knowledge, the people that actually can take that fear head on and do the deal anyways.
Oh man. Yeah. So, I mean, so much there. Just what a great foundation for you to work so intimately in the business, to be, a key component of deals, literally deal after deal after deal through a downturn, to learn an industry like commercial real estate and multifamily in particular through a downturn. And like you said, to get paid to do that, and to get the resources and the networking and the potential partners and investors and like all of those to just high level industry knowledge. Like you really got like a paid $30,000 or 30,000 foot view education almost of how to do apartment investing. And what's more is, and what's key is that you went and did it. Like you said, it took putting the pieces together. You had all the pieces around you, but it took the entrepreneurial mind, the high level, high view mind of, okay, this is how the game's played. This is what we need to do. Here are the next action steps. And here are the resources I have. And I'm going to put them together and make this happen and go get deals done. That's just so impressive that you were able to, impressive, but not surprising, quite frankly, that you were able to take such high level business activity and do it for a number of years, learn it, have great people around you. It sounded like you had almost like a league of mentors around you in the banking world, to kind of show you the ropes, who, and then you got to, like I said, you got to see the downturn, which really few of us have seen. I was a residential real estate agent through the downturn. But in terms of commercial multifamily, I haven't seen a full cycle myself. And I know that there's a lot of high level people that have done huge, big things in the last 8 years that also have not seen a downturn or a full cycle yet. So I really, I just acknowledge you, man, for putting it all together and making it happen. That's great stuff.
Well, thanks. Yeah, no, it was great. And like I said, with all the banking mentors I had, at the end of the day, if you think about them, they were all employees that worked for the bank, and then had similar or more knowledge than I did at the time. And they just chose to stick at the bank. So there's something about having the knowledge, and there's something completely different about actually taking action. And then if you're looking to get into the business, really, the thing I think that you just need to keep in mind is you don't need to know everything. You just need to kind of know the next thing, just kind of take that first step, and then you can kind of learn along the way. And it's a team sport, so you don't need to know everything, every answer to every question. You seem to have access to people
Right.
that can help you, for like whether it's your lawyer or your management company or a good mortgage broker to help you with a debt, or whatever that team member is on your team. And then you just kind of just take that one step in front of you, and that's kind of how you walk a mile is one step at a time. So just kind of getting going. And then once you get that first deal done, it gets, exponentially easier. The first deal is really, really hard. And then once you're going from 0 to 1 is hard, but 1 to 2 is probably 10 times easier than 0 to 1. And then now, we're doing 50th or whatever deal at this point in time. So it's kind of like just another day at the office, and we kind of have systems set up, and it's not that big a deal anymore. It's not as nerve wracking, even though the dollar amounts are materially higher today than what they are then. It's just, you've been there, done that, and you got a process and a team, and you just focus on the main things, and someone else kind of takes care of a lot of the day-to-day details. And at the end of the, a couple months later, you buy the deal and you move on with your life. So it's kind of cool to see where the business has started, kind of where we are today.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait I want to ask you about a few of the banking business practices and principles that you brought into your multifamily business. But I first want to highlight something, and just what you just said about the folks around you that taught you the business, that were high level bankers, that for whatever reason decided to stay in the banking industry and basically stay employees of the bank. And I think in the business world, there really is truly, there's two basic mindsets. One's an owner mindset and one's an employee mindset. And an owner mindset is 100% accountable and responsible for everything that happens in their business, and knows that and owns that and makes it happen, as opposed to an employee that is comfortable basically being kind of a cog in the wheel, and is comfortable being responsible to somebody above them and answering to somebody above them. And listen, the world needs both, right? Like,
Oh, for sure.
And there's nothing wrong with either one of these two things. But my feeling is that my listeners right now, and you guys know yourselves well, and you know who you are, but my feeling is that my listeners are basically owner mindset type people. And I think they're going to really appreciate hearing your description, your highlighting of that, taking a really nice hand that was dealt to you on a business level in terms of education, resources, networking, et cetera, and just killing it and really kicking it into gear. So some of the, you mentioned that systems, processes, principles, practices that you brought from banking to multifamily. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I have a lot of sayings or things. One of the things that I really kind of took away, it was one of my little sayings, is, I noticed the people that kind of had problems really had one or all four of these things that they kind of did that really got them in trouble 12, 13 years ago. That really the foundational things that I took into our business. One is, a lot of people that had problems that had come me knocking on the door trying to work their loan out. They bought in kind of like I said, rule number one is don't buy on the hood. So they bought in really high crime, lower socioeconomic areas, so those are kind of the areas that tend to have the most trouble when there's economic disruption. There's, high crime. So people are constantly always, living there because they don't have any other options of places to live. And so you just kind of get the lower demographic that has, just some crime issues and challenges with that. And, when you hit an economic recession, kind of like we're in right now, those are the people that are having the most problems. So where there is delinquency and all these eviction moratoriums right now, you talk to people that own tougher area, lower quality properties in tougher areas, their delinquency numbers are materially higher than, say, like my portfolio that I own today. So these people are having some collection issues, or maybe it hasn't fully all the way gone through because there's, not only eviction moratoriums, but foreclosure moratoriums and stimulus money everywhere. But, if we ever get gravity, which I don't know if we ever will in this financial world that we're in right now, but gravity ever sets in, those properties have the most problems. Two, a common thing I saw is people didn't capitalize their deals very well. So they didn't do a good physical inspection. They didn't identify all the immediate needs, deferred maintenance. They didn't set aside money to execute their renovation or their upgrade program. They thought they would do it out of cash flow, and that just doesn't work very well. So, doing good physical inspection, setting aside that money up front so you have money to cure all the deferred maintenance as well as upgrade the units to your business plan. That works. Doing it out of cash flow, you get a little dip, then your cash flow isn't there, and then that could snowball on you a little bit. The third thing is I just have an improper management. One of the things that was really prevalent 15 years ago in my market is you'd have someone from Los Angeles or California sell a duplex or single family rental and then have enough cash to go do 1031 and buy a 40 or 50 unit apartment building in Dallas, Texas, because it's just what the value trades were that far out of whack back then. And then they would try to self-manage it. So I actually inherited a loan where a UPS driver in Los Angeles sold a rent house and bought a 30 or 40 unit deal in Texas and tried to self-manage it from California. And I can tell you the end of that story wasn't very good. And, he ended up losing all of his money in the deal. So making sure you have proper management in place. And then finally, being smart about the debt you put on. Don't get fully levered on all these deals. If you go a little higher leverage, maybe take the longer term fixed rate loan so you don't have maturity and interest rate risk on you. If you're going to take a bridge loan or a floating rate loan, maybe you get a little bit lower on your leverage. So you have a little bit more margin for error. I mean, if you're needing to, I've seen a lot of syndicators the last 4 or 5 years or 2-3 years really in particular, prior to COVID, really the lockdowns hitting, where they would have to take, a bridge loan at 75%, and then they would strip in some mezzanine financing or preferred equity to take their full leverage up to 85% to make an IRR look good enough to go attract capital from their investors. So, that's fine as long as everything works, but, get one little hiccup and you can, lose the whole thing. So you're just making sure you're fundamentally setting your deal up right and not over leveraging. And it's okay taking bridge loan. It's okay taking adjustable rate mortgages. Honestly, we're almost exclusively doing adjustable rate mortgages now to avoid large prepay penalties. That's a whole nother topic. But
right,
I think
we're assuming
smart about the leverage you put on these deals is really key.
Yeah. We're assuming 2 of those loans right now. The long-term fixed with heavy prepay penalties and
getting good purchase price due to it. So it's I think one of the best opportunities in the marketplace right now is doing loan assumptions. We're buying a deal on a loan assumption and getting, a $10,000 unit basis break due to taking on the crappy loan. So you give up a little cash flow up front to get, more pop on the back end with a lower purchase price.
Yeah. And if you're doing it in a dynamic market that is really on the right trajectory and, you're in at least a 5-year model, you've got that kind of tailwind that's working for you as well. And that's going to do nothing but help. Obviously you want to cash flow and have it be a good deal as it is. But the loan assumption model that's like I said, it's a new one for us, but we got 2 really good deals in Columbus, Ohio as a result of being willing to take on a couple of loans. So
nice.
So a few lessons there. Don't buy in the hood. So I always like to phrase things in the positive. So would you say, is there such thing as buying Class C that's not in the hood?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's where I started my career. I think it's really just kind of the high crime areas. It's really hard to defend against crime because the people that live in those areas, the first opportunity to have any sort of upward mobility, they're going to get right out of there. So buying, workforce housing stuff. And, we tended to be always a little bit more suburban and kind of fit what I wanted to do. So maybe not inner city Dallas, but we'd be kind of first or second rung suburb that have a little better school district. And, people, especially people that have, kids, are always trying to aspire to have a little bit better life for their kids than they are. So whatever form or fashion that is, they'll pay a little extra to get, the first rung suburbs so their kids has a little bit better opportunity and educational versus being in the worst parts of whatever town that you're investing in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What I wanted to ask you a little bit about kind of the typical property in your portfolio as far as age, unit count, obviously asset class.
Sure. Yeah. So we started out, we only do multifamily. I have there's 2 buildings now that are mixed use that have a little bit of retail component to it, but it's very, very, very small percentage of the income for each of those properties. But we started out, Tate, a lot of it was just, true workforce housing. So in Texas, think like 1960s or 1970s, kind of for year construction. We did a whole bunch of that, and then we transitioned to what we call it B class. I think like 1980s, kind of generally speaking, for year construction, which there's a lot of that built in the Texas markets. And then really the last 4 years or so of my career, we've been kind of trying to focus on A to A minus. Mm-hmm. So generally something that's kind of 20 years or younger. I kind of define that as kind of 2000s or newer built. And that's kind of most of our portfolio. Then over the last several years, we really kind of last year, 2020 was kind of, we pretty much finished off the cycle where we kind of have sold the older stuff and then, bought newer stuff either through 1031 or just distributing the capital and buying, selling and closing the deal out and buying a fresh deal. That's been intentional to try to get, bigger, newer, younger is kind of mm-hmm. what we're looking for. And really it's a function of us having a successful track record. When we started out, we had no track record. So when fortunately going full cycle on, we sold 20 deals or something like that. I can't remember the exact number right now. So we sold a material amount of deals and produced some pretty good returns for everybody. So our ability to track capital today is much greater. So it's hard for me to go buy a deal and raise $2 or $3 million because the demand is so high that I need to raise, more larger checks really when we're putting capital out. But the real reason is just kind of the function of the way the market's matured and changed over my 8-9 years and owning multifamily. Is when I first started out in Dallas, which is where we focused only, was the cap rates were there's a little bigger spread between the class A top grade to the class C, or there used to be a thing called class D apartments, and they don't call class D apartments anymore. Everything's a C, but it used to be like a brand new class A deal in Dallas was about a 5 cap in say 2012, 2013. A B deal was like 6 to 6.5 cap, and a C deal was like 8 to 8.5. Well, now a brand new class A deal is like a 4.5, a B deal is like 4.75, and a C deal is like 5. And if there's a value add component to it, you make those cap rates even lower. So the cap rates are basically the same, irrespective of age or vintage or location. So to me, it doesn't really make sense to pay the same or similar cap rates for something built in 1974 that I can for something built in 2004 or 2014. So that's kind of more our business model. And I know there's a value add component with that exists within the workforce housing that you don't necessarily have if you buy something newer or nicer, but the debt's also better on the class A stuff, or at least it is for groups like mine that we're, done a bunch of deals. So the debt's a little better. So the overall returns are pretty similar and the risk profile is materially lower. So on a risk adjusted basis, it just has made sense to us and what we're trying to accomplish, to sell old, buy new. And that's kind of what we've executed over the last 3-4 years and pretty much are out of it. We have two B deals and 1 C deal still left, but those are kind of special situations and some of our best located stuff that we just don't plan on selling. So those will kind of just stay there. I'm not going to say they run themselves, but they're kind of the easiest assets that we had owned back then. And they still are easy to this day, just due to location or whatever with that particular asset.
Is there a point in the cap rate progression that you're not a buyer in Dallas Fort Worth?
I think that it's a function of, I think the answer would be, yeah, I don't know what that is, but I mean, I think the cap rates have gotten so low. It's crazy to think that, what was 8.5 is now 4.5 in my career. And it doesn't seem like it's that long. I guess I'm starting to get a little bit older now that, used to always be the young guy. Now I'm not necessarily the old guy, but I'm not the young guy anymore. But it's a market. If you think about it, Tate, like right now, as we talk, generic suburban multifamily deal and 70s deal in Dallas, Fort Worth area is going to trade at a lower cap rate than something on Manhattan Island, which like what world do we live in that is a thing, but that's kind of the case. And that's probably the case.
It's unreal. It really is.
Suburban Phoenix and wherever. I mean, that's just it's a little bit of a backwards world right now. So maybe it's a good time to go to Manhattan Island to buy a bunch of product to be a little counter cyclical. But yeah, at some point, if the fundamentals don't make sense, you got to get out. But what is happening is everyone that all this institutional money and non-institutional money all thought you had to be in these gateway markets, your LA, San Francisco, Miami, New York, Boston, DC. And now those markets are the worst performing the last, say, 12 months. And the prospects are much more dim. And now that COVID's kind of been the accelerator. That's already the trends that are already there are being, accelerated. So the work from home, you don't have to have your people in downtown San Francisco going past all the craziness that's there and paying, triple the office rent that you would in, say, Dallas or Salt Lake City. So we can kind of move there and have, lower cost of living for all my employees. And so that's kind of happening. So people are seeing the growth of the Texas markets and Salt Lake and Phoenix and Atlanta and the Floridas and Carolinas and markets like that. Mm-hmm. And so they're paying lower and lower cap rates because they were projecting to have higher and higher rental rate growth in these markets. And then the markets are leaving. I mean, I'm hearing that San Francisco, year over year, lease trade outs are negative 20 to 30%. So you're getting a negative trade out of 20, 30%, where probably the hottest market in the country is probably Phoenix, and they're getting, 8 to 10% rent growth in Phoenix in spite of COVID. So, you could trade negative 20% for positive 8%. That's a pretty good trade. So I think that's really what it is. But at some point, the math isn't going to make any sense. And, at some point, Manhattan might make more sense than Dallas, but I think the general consensus is Dallas makes more sense than Manhattan right now and will for the next, several years. So I think we got quite a bit of legs. It's just a secular change in our market, not necessarily, the markets are cyclical. So we'll have our cycles within it, but it's like a super cycle where, it's been going on for the better part of, 12, 13 years, and really kind of started probably 20 years ago. But a lot of people 20 years ago were so worried about Texas because a lot of people got crushed in the late 80s and early 90s with the S&L crisis and the bust that happened then, that they kind of just, redlined the Texas markets for many years. And now those guys are coming back in droves. And I think it's just kind of the front end of that curve. And I think we got a lot of years of positive momentum behind us.
So you're bullish on Dallas Fort Worth, obviously. I mean, that goes without saying. Is there any looking outside of the markets you're in right now for higher cap rates?
Yeah, Austin's really tough right now. I mean, as we record this, the first part of 2021, I mean, we're looking, but I mean, shoot, everything there starts with a 3, and it's really challenging, right, to make these deals make sense to me. I went to Phoenix 3-4 years ago and didn't buy, and because we bought Austin instead of Phoenix about the time we spent Austin, so I don't have too many regrets. But that was clearly a mistake. Phoenix has been, unbelievable. The Florida markets, I think a lot of those make sense. Maybe Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando. I don't know so much to South Florida. They have, unlike you and me, they have, hurricanes there. So that always kind of spooks me a little bit, which is why we're not in coastal Texas. I think the Carolinas makes some sense quite a bit. I know a lot of people own in Atlanta. Atlanta reminds me a lot. Atlanta, Phoenix, Dallas kind of remind me a lot of each other. So those are good. Salt Lake City, I think I don't know as much about your market, but I think your market is a little bit higher priced relative to some of these other markets we just talked about. That might be a function of scarcity of land within the mountainous and the government owning so much of it. But I think Salt Lake City would probably be a pretty decent market to consider as well. So I think markets like that, but really anywhere that's got landlord and business friendly environment, you got jobs that are going there, kind of following the business friendly environment, and then people follow jobs. So I think if you do those things, the wind's kind of at your back. The joke, or the thing I like to say, really the city I like to pick on, is kind of like Detroit. So one of the biggest risk of this whole thing, if Dallas ever turns into Detroit and half your population moves out over the next 50 years, it's going to be really hard to be successful owning multifamily. Where if, it's like Dallas, where we're having, tons of migration in, I could be, bad at what I do, and I still probably be okay because the market's going to come bail me out because the wind's at my back. So I'm just trying to put myself in a position where the market could do part of the heavy lifting for me. I don't have to do everything on my own.
Yeah. That's the beauty of picking your markets well and strategically. Have you guys ever built new?
No, that's not something we've done. I'm not saying that at some point we don't potentially do it, but it's not kind of in the cards for me now. I mean, I talked to a lot of developers, and we bought stuff from developers, but you look at their returns and what they project, it's honestly not that dissimilar from what we've been able to produce over the time. And I get cash flow, day one, and they got to wait 2-3 years and actually execute. And they're building into some future unknown environment that, 3 years from now, when they actually have their property stabilized, it might be, a terrible time. So they have, a whole lot more risk within it. So if the returns are materially greater, I think it might make some sense at some time to do it. And I see the allure of it, because if you do it right and you time it well, you're building at a 15-20% discount to, valuation because your cost is less. But, there's a whole lot of risk along the way, and it just hasn't really fit our profile. And we like getting checks, month one, not month 36.
Have you bought new product from developers?
We've bought several deals straight from the developer in various ways. We bought a couple of deals pre-stabilized. So they were most of the way stabilized, got a little bit of a discount for it not being fully stabilized. And then we just last deal I bought actually was from the developer. He built a 2-phase deal built in 16 and 18. And he kind of just messed it around, kind of a little more private guy. And he installed the roof on phase 1 wrong. So had water penetration. So we had to go putting a new roof on it right now. Caused some other like carpentry issues and things like that. He was on his third management company, kind of ran out of money. So it was a little distressed from that standpoint. And so we were able to get a little better price. And, his costs were locked in 2014, 15, 16 when he started building. And now we're, he's still making money, but we're getting a pretty decent basis relative to what 2020 and 2021 prices are. So it was kind of a win-win at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's great. And that's exactly what you're looking for, guys, is a distressed situation where you can help somebody out and create a win-win for everybody, like you said.
Yeah. And like the loan assumptions you're doing, that's kind of like I look at that like an alternative value add, right? So you got, I'm sure, I don't know the deals in particular, but you're probably buying something that you're going to renovate and increase the rents by providing a better product. But you're also kind of getting an alternative value add, which is simply owning it a period of time, and your loan's going to pay down over time. And then your yield maintenance prepay is going to burn down over, as you pay your mortgage down. And as the time to maturity shrinks, 2-3 years from now, the prepay is going to go down, and you're buying it with historically low rates. So if any sort of interest rates tick up, your prepay will go down as well. So that's kind of a alternative value add strategy. Not every value add has to be you physically doing something to the property. You can do it from a different, maybe a different perspective or a different angle. So we're always trying to find maybe an alternative way of looking at the same problem everyone else is looking at, maybe from a different perspective.
Yeah. You just made me feel really good about what we're doing. You highlighted a lot of the pros to a loan assumption with a yield spread penalty, prepay penalty. And we've, like I said, these are firsts for us. So it's good to get some affirmation from you on those. And it is, I hadn't looked at it that way, but it is kind of a value add.
Yeah, you got a $2 million. I don't know what your prepay is, but say it's a $2 million prepay.
Yeah,
you got 6 or 7 years left on the loan. If you just wait 6 years, in theory, you should make $2 million just by waiting. Right. So then you have all the other things you can do to increase the value and pay cash flow out and whatever. But I mean, if you just simply the function of time will make you $2 million in that hypothetical scenario there.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just talk for a minute, if we could, about scaling. So I mentioned to you before we got started, where we are with starting off the year with a few hundred units, basically, going into 2021, and with the intention of adding at least another 500 to 600 this year, and then 3 to 4 times that over the next 3 years, at least. You've obviously, you guys started in 2013, didn't you? In the multifamily space. Yeah. So, I mean, a pretty short period of time to put the kind of numbers up on the board that you guys put. What was your secret sauce to scaling up the way you guys did?
I mean, a couple things, right? I mean, we're hyper focused, as we talked about. We were just in one market for the longest time, and that's about 2 or 3 years ago now. We went to Austin, but I'm physically located in Austin. My business partner Sean is physically located. I'm in Dallas. He's physically located in Austin. So we play in the markets that we live in. So that is not always it's not necessary per se, but it is helpful. Being local is it's an unfair business, right? So that's an advantage I have versus say you if you're trying to come to Dallas. That's one thing, right? So I'm super focused. I'm in a market that's pretty big too. Dallas is kind of about as big as they get from the multifamily space. Maybe Manhattan and LA might be a little bigger than us, but we're right there with 800,000 plus market rate apartment units. There's more senior and affordable and student on top of that. So we're really big markets. There's a lot of opportunity here, and there's a lot of velocity in my market as well. So these deals trade all the time. So I got a lot of opportunity just kind of looking at my market. And then really from like the deal perspective, the way to scale really is I was able to establish a lot of relationships. I was fortunate for being a banker. I had a lot of these relationships kind of start then grow. But I'm in the market all the time, and I'm going to the bar or going to dinner, or just, I'm in one. There's like two or three really kind of main little hubs where most of the multifamily brokers office, and I'm in one of those hubs. So like I was at lunch right before we started recording this, and I ran into a couple guys I know, and I got to talk to them for 2 minutes. I was, hey, how's it going, and passing. But those little interactions really kind of help. So when I established that relationship, so you're going to Columbus, Ohio, you establish that relationship with the broker, and if Columbus is, I don't know that much about Columbus, but it's a big enough market where you can get a good relationship with that broker. You do a successful transaction. I want to monetize that relationship over and over and over again. If I'm going to then go to Indianapolis to buy my next deal, I got to form a new relationship with that broker. And then I go to Denver to do my next deal. It's hard to really monetize those relationships over and over and over again. So I can point you to, 3 guys I've done over 5 transactions with each, just because we just have that relationship, but it makes it a lot easier. So that's one way on the kind of the deal sourcing, deal funding. On the other side is once you have all these deals, how the heck do you manage all this stuff and your investors and try to have a life at the same time. So, part of that's people, you scale up with people. And the first thing you should get is, good admin, kind of how to take stuff off your plate. When you're starting this business, you do everything. You do the $10 hour task, you do the $10,000 hour task.
Right.
It's kind of the way it works. And so one of the first things you should do is try to get those $10 hour tasks off your plate onto somebody else. And then, we hired an operations person that really, we were a couple guys doing a bunch of deals, which we always like to do, but we need to turn that into a company. So we didn't have any processes or procedures or policies in place. So one by one, we just systematically got all that kind of documented and put in place, got some technology solutions, investor database, which there's a lot more options now than when we bought our first one about 5 years ago.
Which one do you use?
We use IMS.
Okay.
But we're thinking about maybe swapping that up. There's like 3 options really that were viable when we got ours, and we were kind of in beta with them. And now there's, I don't know, a couple dozen probably really viable ones out there. So we might switch that up. We're going to review that at least. And then, so that's key. And then making sure you got right professionals. So we had a sole practitioner for accountant, and we had a 2-person law firm for a lawyer. My lawyer actually moved to a bigger firm, so we kind of went with them. They got 70, 80 lawyers, like 10 or 12 in the real estate corporate practice. So if he's on he had a baby, so he's out on paternity leave, someone else is there to pick up his slack. And, my old accountant got young guy, he's fine, but he had a little mini stroke, and that kind of really woke me up. Like, oh no, if he goes down, I got a big problem. So we need to have a bigger professional. So as you scale it's not all about cost. Some of this is about redundancy in your systems. Get asset management help. I mean, you get to 1,000, 1,500 units, you probably want to bring in someone that, is an asset manager. We had another mindset shift when he's kind of hired a couple people and they weren't the right people. So we had to modify that a little bit. So we actually hired a headhunter, which, they aren't cheap. They typically are 20, 25% of the first year's salary. So that's a pretty healthy cost. But it was like, we did that and we got the right guy. And now that right guy's made all the difference in the world. So really my mentality around the asset manager was, my entire net worth is basically all intents and purposes tied up in these, 25 assets I own. So little, and then as we know, little swings, operations have big swings of value. In a 5-cap world, every dollar NOI is 20 to value. So, and if all my net worth's tied up there, and I can hire someone to do a little better than the next guy, it's going to have big dramatic swings in my net worth. So that was kind of a mentality or mindset shift along the way, coming from the guy who's, dad fixed appliances for a living, mom was a secretary. So these are hard things and hard concepts sometimes to break your mindset. But once you kind of get to that, it was really helped kind of grow and scale our business. So thinking about hiring the right type of people, maybe paying a little bit more. And if you hire a higher caliber person that probably can do the job of 2 or 3 lesser caliber people, plus they don't need as much oversight. That was kind of the path that we have chosen to go down.
Yeah, go for quality over quantity, so to speak. We find that across the board, whether it's, we come from the single family space, and subcontractors, GCs, going with you pay the price every time you go with a low cost option in this business, I feel like. And I can certainly see how the converse would be true, that you invest in, like you say, a high level person that doesn't need to be managed, that's going to enable you rather than disable you. Right? You don't need to be holding somebody's hand right now when you're growing a startup apartment acquisition firm. You need somebody in a lot of ways that maybe even hold your hand from time to time, like helping you with certain tasks and, delegation, getting them to take care of certain things. So just to reiterate, so pick your market well. I heard that. And I heard the kind of the magic of picking a big dynamic market that has a lot of, I use the word velocity, I think.
Yep.
A lot of trade going on. Nurture those broker relationships, obviously get deals closed, and then capitalize, monetize those relationships and that transaction. As far as your human resources, start with an admin, but really outsource what you can in the way of the $10 an hour task to start, and then kind of build from there. And then I heard redundancy in your systems and processes. Really
and bigger support people, because you're not going to likely do accounting or legal in house. So having, a law firm that if your lawyer gets hit by a bus, there's someone else there to kind of pick up the pieces and keep the ball going forward until you maybe transition. So having, a little bit deeper bench within the service providers that we have was certainly key. So
yeah, just to kind of start to round things out a bit, I mean, you love this, don't you? I can tell.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's been fun trying to, like I said, I always like doing deals. So I like the transactional part of it. It's been kind of interesting growing and scaling the company, because I didn't have the background of any of this. So kind of learning how to become guys from doing deals and actual companies has been kind of interesting. It's not always, that's not the fun part of the business to me, but it's been kind of interesting for sure.
Yeah. What's the fun part for you? Like what do you have the most?
I mean, I like doing deals. I like, Tate, if you want to be in this business, you want to be a sponsor, the way you make money in this business is you got to find deals and you got to find money. So find deals, find money, everything else is sort of noise. It's all important. You got to do your taxes right. You got to asset manage it. You got to buy the right deal, all this stuff. But the way you get paid is you find deals and find money.
Yep.
So that's what I enjoy doing the most, really. And really kind of almost even more on the deal side. I like the hunt of finding something and making it work.
You like the thought leadership aspect of this too?
Yeah, that's kind of neat. That's pretty cool that you get to be a little mini celebrity within a very small niche of topics. It wasn't quite what I thought. 18-year-old Michael Becker thought his life was going to be like having a bunch of middle-aged guys. I think it's pretty cool, but it's kind of my lot in life, and this way it is.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great the way it worked out. Well, so one last question. What does success look like to you? Let's say 5 years out. Like what is SPI doing?
I think kind of generally more the same. I'd like to be another market or two. We've been kind of slow and measured trying to get into the next market. And then, the more we do this, and the older I get, the more and more this needs to be about SPI and our company culture and the infrastructure we built, the less it needs to be about Michael Becker, right? So trying to continue to build something that could be, hopefully perpetual. Maybe one day the kids want to get in the business, or some key employee could take the company over at some future point in time when I'm ready to not do this, down the road. Or I can maybe become a kind of like the chairman type of person where I can come in the office for a few hours a day and do what I want to do, and then get the heck out of there, because I don't think I'm actually going to ever retire. But the grind of the day-to-day can wear on you a little bit, especially when you're doing 1,300 K1s and all the other various tasks that you have to do, like I'm doing right now.
1,300 K1s, that's a good problem to have, if you ask me.
That means, but it's a problem, and
it's a problem, but you're doing something really well if you're doing 1,300 K1s. But I can see that you want to definitely be outsourcing that and getting that off your plate for sure. Well, Michael, thank you so much. This has been such a treat to get to spend this time with you and to learn from you, getting your world a little bit. And you're a very generous person, and doing your own podcast, sharing the knowledge, sharing the wealth yourself. You put your money where your mouth is, and And so, there's a lot of people out there that are just killing it in the space, but you don't know who they are. You never hear about them. And that's fine. They can do their thing and do that. But I think for me, and I think obviously for you as well, like one of the coolest parts of being successful, especially in this space of apartments, is getting to help other people, because as you mentioned earlier, it is a team sport, and it takes a village and to get a deal done. Anyway, Michael, thank you once again. Yeah. Really appreciate you being with us. Any last words you'd like to share to our listeners?
Yeah, no, appreciate. Well, first, thank you for having on the opportunity to speak to listeners, and definitely, if you're an aspiring sponsor, I mean, it's like we talked about, it's a team sport, and you don't need to know everything. You just need to kind of have resources where you're going to lean upon. So, if you're never gonna know everything you need to know to buy that first deal. You're just gonna have to do it anyways, right? So just know enough, don't have the right people to lean on. Don't make critical mistakes, but you gotta take a little bit of risk if you really want to go out and do it. And you're never going to be comfortable. So don't keep waiting until you're fully 100% comfortable, because that day is never going to come. But yeah, if you guys want to find the thing, I guess I kind of leave the resource the most is really kind of the new show. Trying to get out there. So obviously we have the Old Capital podcast, which is what we've been doing for 6 years, but it's called the Multifamily Investing Show with Michael Becker on YouTube or iTunes, Stitcher, or the website is www.multifamilyinvestingshow.com. Check it out, subscribe, share it with your friends. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Is that the best way for people to find you?
Yep, there's a contact form on there, fill it out and all that good stuff.
Okay, great. Well, I love what you said about get uncomfortable being, or get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? If you're going to be in this space, it's you're always pushing, I think, on the edge to your next step. And that's part of the excitement for me. So, right. Once again, Michael, thank you. Have a great rest of your work day. Appreciate you spending this time. And listeners, thank you for taking the time to spend with us. Hopefully you got a tremendous amount of value out of this. I can't wait to go back and listen to it myself and take notes. And I've been taking notes the whole time anyway, but wow, what a great hour. Thank you again, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tate. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to The Apartment Guys with Tate Seamer. Tate and Friends are grateful to have you as a loyal listener. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, review, and share with friends on your Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Also, check out Tate's YouTube channel for videos of many of these episodes and more. Until next time, take massive action steps and rock on.